Hey guys, what's going on? Jay here, smarthelping.com. We got a new financial model. It's for new housing or condos, um, development, build and sell, not build and rent. It's a specific model. It's got specific things to meet that need for users who are trying to present to investors or analyze deals themselves or what have you. So what I'll do here is I'm going to go through each tab. I'll go through all the assumptions. I'll do a sample case so you can kind of see how it works, and um, then you'll know how to use it. The link is in the description box below if you want to purchase it. Probably just going to charge $45 for this thing. It's worth, I mean, to actual developers, it's probably worth thousands, but to the average person, you know, the pricing is very fair. I'll say that. I took about 5 or 6 hours to build this, but you got to remember years went into understanding how to build these things. So it's not just about my time to build it right now, but also what knowledge had to be acquired to build that in that time. So let's get into it. We start off with a global control where we can define some high level assumptions. Like the start year here, we're going to go 2024. Project start month. So this affects a lot of the different things for interest reserves, loan fees, GP fees. So what we want to say is this will be the month where your first unit is started to be built, or when you purchase like the land, whatever month that's going to be. This would have to be in the first 12 months of your launch year. So let's just say we're going to do it in May, so I'd put 5 here. Percentage of total cost finance. So this is all construction costs. This will apply to the land, just the entire cost of the whole project. Um, so here, let's say maybe 60%. Maybe interest rate of it's interest only, maybe 8.5%. Closing costs, maybe 2.5%. Planned month to repay all debt. This one will fill in after we fill out some of the other assumptions. Average selling cost fees, say maybe 6% when you sell the units. Down here, let's assume this is going to be a joint venture, but it doesn't have to be. You can zero these out if they don't make sense for your situation. But if you're a GPLP, here's the GP fees. You've got maybe a development fee based on percentage of total costs, 1.5% acquisition fee, which in this case it's development. So the only thing this would apply to is acquiring the land. So that could still be a fee you're charging as the sponsor. Financing fee is going to be a percentage of the total credit facility based on the total draws. Let's say maybe 1% on that. Sales and marketing fee you might be charging, and then also just any other hard-coded fees you're charging. In this, whatever you put in here, let's say 25,000. This is also going to happen on this month you put up here. Whatever month that is, that's when this cost happens. These are costs paid by the project and funded by equity, which if it's 100% funded by an LP, then they'd be paying all these costs. And then that's income for the GP. Okay, so there's that. Let's go to unit cost. So here, this is pretty detailed. I wanted to do detailed cost schedule for each of the unit types. So you can have arbitrarily large or small units in your development project. It could be hundreds, tens, thousands, whatever. But you can have a max of 10 types of units that you're going to be developing. And here you can list up to, what do we got, 37 slots for the different individual costs that can be directly applied to the unit. So construction materials, concrete, steel, lumber, all that, labor and contractor fees, plumbing, HVAC, interior, windows, insulation, painting, appliances, bathrooms, and what have you. So you can list these. And you might have some units that have certain things and some units that don't have. That's fine. List all of the different costs here. And then just fill in which units have what costs. All it's going to do is populate the totals down here, and that's going to be used to populate the total cost, which will happen in each month that you have in the unit schedule tab. We'll go over that. But every time you have a certain amount of units started to be built, all those costs will hit in that month. So I'm just going to put in, um, some arbitrary assumptions here. I have no idea if this is accurate, but it's arbitrary, so it doesn't matter. You just can see how it works. So you'll put in these for each of these different unit types. Okay, then we go to the unit schedule, and now here's your 10 different unit types. And for each one, let's say we're going to start in, what do we say, month 5. So maybe unit type 1, we're going to start 3 of them there, maybe 3 more in August, 3 more here, and then maybe we'll sell, so that's a total of 9, and we have the totals here to make sure you don't sell more than you purchased or purchase more than you sold. These should always equal. So we got to sell 9, so let's say maybe you plan to sell 6 here and maybe 3 here. And then you can put your expected sales price, let's say 350,000 on these, maybe 250,000 on these. Now keep in mind, actually let's go up to 450. Keep in mind that if you're gonna, let's say you wanted to just sell them all at once, but there's potentially different sales prices for each of these units for whatever reason of this unit type. But you know, there's 10 different unit types to help avoid that, so you can get pretty granular. But you can put a weighted average sales price here if that is the case, and you'll still get the correct number here for total sales proceeds. Okay, let's say we start some of these down the road here a little bit. You know, say we're going to build some of these here, here, and here. So another set of 9, and then we're going to sell them, you know, maybe after a couple months we think we can get them sold for, and these are going to be maybe 650,000 each. So you kind of get the idea, but you can fill that out for every unit type based on whatever is your case. We're just going to use the top 2 unit types just for the, so you can see how it works. So now every time I have a number in units started per month, it's going to multiply that, whatever that number is, by the unit cost total for that type. Okay, so there's that. Now you can see on the cost schedule, here's our model going out for up to 10 years. And you can see here is the total construction cost that we've entered so far based on all of the unit start months and how many units we're starting to build in each month. Now we only put 3 for each of these months, and the cost is the same for all of them, so that's why these are all 286. But it would be different if, say, you know, you did 4 here. You'd have to add another 4 here, so that's 10. And you can see now that's a little bit different number now. So we have development cost for units, amount financed here, which is based on that percentage. And you can see the detail of the development cost for each unit type here going across and what the total is. So right now we're spending 1.8 million, but there's other costs that might not make sense to apply to a per unit basis. So we have other development costs, and here you would keep in mind row 20 is just for land, because we're going to apply this fee, remember, this acquisition fee, if there is one, to the land purchase. So that has to be in that row. So on your cost schedule tab, row 20 is land purchase, whatever that is. Let's say, you know, in month 5 we have to buy the land. Let's put in maybe $1.5 million. Whoops. Okay, so $1.5 million there. Now you might not start actually constructing these houses or condos or what have you. You know, you buy land here, maybe you do 1, 1, and 1, or whatever the case. The number you put in here doesn't mean you finish them all in this month. It just means you're starting construction, and so this is where costs are going to populate. But it could take time, and that's why there's 2 rows, one for constructing, start when you're starting the construction of each, and then when you actually sell these units. So you can have some timing there depending on how long it takes. All right. So land, you know, maybe architecture and engineering fees. We'll pay those up front. 250,000 regulatory costs, you know, Sales and marketing, that might happen later after you've been building for a bit. However much you're going to spend there. Legal accounting fees. Let's just put this up here. Insurance, potentially. Just contingency. And then property taxes. You might have to start paying property taxes right when you buy the land, so you could have that happening. You could just enter that by month as it is needed to be paid. Maybe let's put 25,000. Maybe that's happening over the course of the model. And then let's see, right now, when's our last unit being sold? In month 27. So maybe we have property taxes until the 27th month, then we're done and we're all out. Now, since we know that is month 27, we can also enter planned month to repay all debt. That can be month 27. You'll see here on the debt tab, I did a schedule that shows the total sales proceeds happening each month, and then you can see when the debt pay down happens. This will be driven by your entry here, planned month to repay all debt. And you can see whatever month has enough to repay the balance, you just kind of look at it and enter. It took me a while to figure out which way to structure this best, but this was the best way to do it that I think would fit the most cases. If you wanted to pay down the debt over time, like you could say, okay, I want to pay some down here on this sale, some down here, and then the rest here. You could manually enter the numbers in here, but if you do manually enter numbers in here, it will no longer run off of this logic automatically, so you'll have to make sure you manually go in and update that. So you probably want to have a master copy of the template to use, but then maybe you have different versions where some you're going to hard code this, some you don't. But it is pretty flexible, and it's pretty hard to break it. Okay, and then on the cost schedule, there's also other costs. So this is just, we've got 22 costs here for other development costs that can happen. And these are all, again, going to be subject to financing of the whatever you put into this percentage here. But there's also a bunch of sections, and all these apply to the same financing assumptions. So you can really get granular with this model if you need to. All right, so we've got our build costs, we've got our sales, we've got all the construction and development costs. We know what's going on with the debt now. Let's get into the monthly details. So here you can see total sales proceeds for each of the unit types happening over time. So here's these unit types being sold. Here is the selling cost happening automatically, and then here's the gross proceeds from the sales happening. Then we've got construction of units. So this is the cost of the direct unit cost happening based on when the units are started to being built, and the cost per unit. So those are happening there. We have other development costs. So these are the manual ones we were entering. This is just that first section of 22 slots here. And you can see these are the other 5 slots or 5 sections that from the cost schedule, which would be these, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So whatever you put into there, it will flow into these rows. So we have this. Again, we're starting in May. Total other development costs, and we have our debt proceeds happening. So this is cash coming in to help pay for some of these costs. Debt repayment, we showed how that was automated. That's happening in the final month here. We have interest expense. Now with interest expense, I did it a little different than I normally would, but I think this makes a lot of sense. Is I took the total expected interest expense over the life of the loan and made that the reserve. And that reserve, whatever it is expected to be up front. So essentially you have an interest reserve that's required to be paid up front, and then you draw on that over time. And the draw on that here happens. You can see how the reserve is going down, down, down until we get to the end and it's paid off. Again, that was another big point of focus is how to do that the best way that would fit the most people. I think this way makes the most sense. Most development projects that like I'm targeting here for people to use this for would be, 12 to 18 months, maybe 36 months. The model goes out for 10 years though. Just, it's easier to make it 10 years versus people having to extend it themselves. So I made it I made it pretty long. But I think doing interest reserve like that makes sense in these shorter development builds. Uh, it wouldn't be that hard to modify if you didn't want to have a reserve. You could just remove that and just here's the actual interest expenses happening based on the draws and the payback. And you could just then adjust the cash flow to target that instead of the interest reserve row. It wouldn't be that hard to change. But right now, the way it works is you just pay the interest reserve all up front, and you can see it drawing over time. And then the rest is just GP fees. So these are just project fees that are income for the GP, depending on how you're structuring this. If it's a joint venture, if it's not, these would just be zero, and you just see the cash flows of the project. But those are happening. Here's the selling fees or disposition fees in this case. We've got development fee, acquisition, financing, and other. Here's the total, and then we have cash flow of the project. So this is the key row. Once we know this is the total cash in and out per month based on everything that's going on. So once we know that, we can see what our IRR is. So it's 8.6% monthly in this case, 171% IRR if we annualize that. This is the number people know are used to. Like if you did the X IRR, this is the number you're going to get. And to check this, you can always plug in the internal rate of return here to the discount rate, and you can see the NPV goes to 0, so that is a good check to make sure the calculation's right. Okay, so there's that. We've got the annual detail that goes over everything we just did, but on an annual basis, so it's a little bit easier to visualize what's going on. You can also group these and hide them so you can see everything in one page real quick. The check there is just making sure the monthly and annual details come up with the same number, which they should. What else do we have here? Okay, so we got monthly, annual detail, fees. We have the waterfall. So if this is a joint venture, you could have different types of ways that each party is going to contribute versus who gets distributions. In this case, I did two options. So you've got an IRR hurdle, which is this, and the annual summary of the IRR hurdle. And you've also got a simple preferred return that has a whole bunch of options for accruing unpaid pref or not, compounding it or not, and options to repay equity with this distribution share or not, which would affect the pref return over time. This model is very good. This logic is awesome. I used a couple of the waterfall templates I've already got on the site to make these. All this other logic was built from scratch that you see getting the project level cash flows, but then I used the waterfall templates because they're really ready to go. So that integrated well. So the waterfall with IRR hurdles, these are just internal rate of returns that the LP must reach, and until they reach that, this is how the cash is split. So pretty simple. These are the different tiers. This is the summary of all the tiers for the LP and GP. You can see the top row's contributions. The rest are the distributions at each tier. So, this is 100-0 split. This is 85-15, 80-20, and 70-30, dictated by the total internal rate of return that the LP has received. Okay, so there's that. The GP has potentially contributions. Right now we're just doing 100% 0, but if it was say 90-10, that's possible. We're going to go back up to 100-0. And then they also have their other fee income happening here, which is part of the project cost, but it's income for them, for the GP. and then you can do a discounted cash flow analysis for both the LP and GP. Now, if there was no joint venture, you could just put 100% to the LP or 0% and 100% to the LP in each of these tiers, or 0% if you just want to. It's just who you want to have the total, but it'll just be one total. You know, if it was just an if there was only one party, you could do that. Put 100 0, and now these, and you'd have to zero out all of this as well. And now you can see the project level cash flows and the LP should be exactly the same. So yeah, you can see 228, 228, 6315. Yeah, so these are identical to the project. 198 IRR, 175 ROI. Yeah. Okay, let me undo that so you can still see as we go along here. So the waterfall IRR summary is just showing you the annual detail each year of what I just showed you on a monthly level. Pretty straightforward. I brought in some of this data up top just so it's visible, but you don't need to edit any of that. Then the waterfall preferred return here, you can see it's a monthly. We're doing based on a preferred return, converting that to monthly return, which applies to the total invested monies from the investor. Once that pref is completed, the rest of the money is split 70-30 or however you want to split it, whatever percentage you enter here. And you can see the total cash flows for the investor, total cash flows for the sponsor, GP, and then discounted cash flow for each party as well here. And if we check it, here's the IRR. If we plug that into the LP, MPP is 0, so we know all our math's looking good. Now there's a lot of options here. So add shortfall to equity. If we hit no, well, that means if there was not enough money to pay the preferred return for that month, it just adds to the equity basis for what the preferred return is going to be. So if we hit yes here, you can see this goes up a little bit. It's going to raise the IRR a little bit. So it's 87.4 if we are compounding. If we don't, it's 87.3. So not a huge difference. And again, this is a shorter, time frame. We're only going 27 months. Start clean each year. If we hit yes, then that means none of the shortfalls roll forward or accrue or compound or anything. It's just if there's cash available, it's distributed. If not, it's not. And you can see here the equity is only what was contributed only. And there's no accrual of these unpaid pref returns. But then when there is distributions here, the pref is paid. We have some equity repayment. And this is being split 70-30 after the pref was met for that period. You could also say you could have the equity balance not reduce. In that case, whatever was contributed is just going to stay there, and you never reduce it over time. So the pref return is just due each month, no matter how much profit has been shared past the pref. So this is, I've done a lot of these for a lot of different situations. So this allows you to cover almost anything you're going to see. There are other things. There's literally hundreds of permutations. So I tried to just build it where it covers the majority of things that you're going to see. But it's a pretty good structure. It works for everything as you see here. Let's put this back to yes. Okay, so this is which one affects it? I can't remember. So this is not a huge difference. I think starting clean each year it's a little bit 87 versus 84. This is probably the biggest factor. Now it'll depend on the timing, the actual total IRR, on how much these will end up affecting the returns for the investor. Waterfall preferred summary annual, just again summarizing this in an annual basis, consolidated for the LP and GP, so you can see all the different what's going on in each year for contributions, distributions. And then the global control will pull all that data in so you can see the total IRR waterfall, what that's equal to. You can see what happened if you do the preferred return instead. As this, these are not like adding it with each other. These are completely separate. They're just looking at the cash flows of the project and using different logic to figure out how to split up the cash flow. And so that's pretty much how the whole thing works. I can't remember if there's one other thing I wanted to talk about on the monthly detail. Uh, Not interest reserve, debt, fees. I think I covered everything. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe. Let me know in the comments if you have any suggestions that you think would be useful to add here. And oh no, I do custom work as well for $165 an hour. If you want to build, modify, template, or build something from scratch. I do a lot of real estate modeling, as you can see. I do a lot of SaaS models and just a lot of just models for all kinds of industries. A lot of joint venture stuff, just a lot of custom assumption work, logic work, building cohort modeling. Um, so I can pretty much do it all. So you can email me if you have requests, jason@smarthelping.com. All right, I'll see you guys on the next one.